I just lived through every car lover's worst nightmare. The HOA president tried to claim my restored Rolls Royce as community property. Her excuse? She said her status granted her ownership. Little did she know I'd turn her power trip into a show for the whole neighborhood. But let's start from the beginning. Before we dive in, tell me where you're listening from. My name's Ron Freeman, and I like things that make sense. A wrench turns a bolt, a wire carries current. You put in the work, you get results. For 2 years, my result was a 1962 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud II. I found her in a barn, looking more like a rusty bathtub where raccoons had raised a family. But I saw her potential. I saw the ghost of what she once was. So I bought her for next to nothing, towed her home and gave her a spot in my garage and every spare hour I had. My wife Pam called her the other woman. She'd say it with a grin, though. She understood. She'd bring me coffee while I was sanding or hold a light while I fought through some ancient British wiring diagram that looked like a plate of spaghetti. Pam's smart like that. My partner in everything, even my greasy hobbies. The day everything started was a Saturday morning. The sun had just come up, painting the sky pink and orange. I had just finished the final polish, the last step. The pearl gray paint looked a mile deep. The chrome grille gleamed so bright it hurt your eyes. The spirit of ecstasy, that silver lady on the hood, looked ready to fly straight into the sunrise. I rolled the car out into the driveway to admire her in the light. It was one of those quiet, perfect moments. 2 years of busted knuckles, late-night part hunts, and smelling like oil. It had all been worth it. Pam came out with 2 mugs of coffee. She handed me one and just stared at the car. "Wow, Ron," she said softly. "She's beautiful. You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected her. "Couldn't have done it without my lighting crew," she smirked. I just held the flashlight. "Crucial support," I said. We stood there for a while, sipping coffee, enjoying the peace. Our neighborhood, Willow Crest, is supposed to be peaceful. Manicured lawns, friendly neighbors, and a strong community spirit. Most of it's true. But every garden has its snake. Ours was Karen Goodson. Karen was the HOA president, the kind of person who discovers a tiny bit of power and wears it like a crown, a robe, and armor all at once. She walked like she was always on her way to fire someone. Her emails had more exclamation points than a comic book. Once she tried to fine a guy because his garden gnome was, and I quote, aesthetically aggressive. She lived for the rules, especially the ones she made up. That morning, I saw her marching across her lawn, clipboard in hand, face twisted like she'd just bitten a lemon. "Morning, Karen," I said calmly. Always polite until it's time not to be. She ignored me, eyes locked on the rolls. She circled it once like a vulture sizing up its next meal. "Freeman," she said sharply. "What is this?" "This," I said, sipping my coffee, "is a car." "Don't be a smart aleck," she snapped. "It's been sitting in your garage for 2 years, a violation of Section 8, Paragraph 3 about inoperable vehicles." But I was willing to let that slide. "Generous of you," I said. "Especially since it runs now." She didn't even react. Her expression changed, disapproval turning into greed. "It's quite a flashy thing," she said. "Far too ostentatious for Willow Crest. It disrupts the neighborhood's visual harmony." Pam stepped forward. "I think it's gorgeous, and Ron restored it himself." Karen barely looked at her. "That's irrelevant. It's parked on community-adjacent property," she said, gesturing to my driveway. "That makes it subject to HOA authority." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Karen, it's my car." "I have the title, registration, and 2 years of scars to prove it." She smiled, a thin, mean little smile. "According to our bylaws, any significant improvement visible to the public can be designated as a community asset for events." I just stared. That was a new level of crazy. Pam, bless her, had already started recording. She always thinks ahead. "That rule is for gazebos or mailboxes, not classic cars," I said. "The bylaws are open to interpretation," she replied smugly. "And I am the interpreter." Then she reached into her khaki pocket and pulled out a bright yellow plastic tag with "Property of Willow Crest HOA" written in thick black marker. Before I could move, she looped a zip tie around the Rolls hood ornament and cinched it tight. The sound of that zip tie cutting through the morning air made my stomach drop. She stepped back proudly. "There," she said. "This vehicle is now officially community property. My position grants ownership. It'll be the lead car in the Founders' Day parade. You'll receive the maintenance schedule soon. Do not remove the tag or the car." I stared at her. Then the tag. Then Pam, who was filming, steady as a rock. I exhaled slowly. I had wanted a quiet Saturday drive. Instead, I had a self-appointed queen claiming my car as her kingdom. I started laughing. Not the happy kind, but the tired, sarcastic kind. "You think this is funny?" She barked. "Oh, I think it's hilarious," I said. "You zip-tied a dollar store tag to a $500,000 car and declared it yours. That's peak Karen." Her jaw tightened. "You'll regret mocking the HOA, Mr. Freeman. This car is ours and I'll get it." Then she turned and marched away. The beautiful morning was gone. The smell of coffee was gone. All that remained was that stupid yellow tag, an insult in plastic and ink. Pam lowered her phone. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at her, then at the car. The war had just begun, and the first shot was a zip tie. We went inside. She uploaded the video and we watched it twice. First time I was angry. Second time I saw the details. The way Karen already had that tag ready. This wasn't spur of the moment. It was planned. "She's been waiting for this," Pam said. "She wants status without doing the work." She was right. The car wasn't about money. It was about legacy. It started with my grandfather. He was a mechanic, a real craftsman. He could listen to an engine and tell which valve was sticking just by the sound. He had a photo of a silver cloud on his shop wall. "That's not just a car, Ronnie," he'd say. "That's engineering as art." He never owned one. Life got in the way. But he passed on his love for machines to me. And when he passed, he left me his toolbox. Those wrenches, worn smooth by his hands, were priceless. Years later, I saw an ad. "Old British car for parts or brave restorer." It was her, the same model from Grandpa's picture. She was rough, buried in dust, sitting in a collapsed barn. But the frame was solid, the engine intact. It felt like destiny. I had to finish what Grandpa started, so I did, piece by piece. 2 years of rebuilding, sanding, rewiring, and painting. Pam was there through all of it. My rock, my helper, my partner. We celebrated every milestone, from the first turn of the key to the final polish. And now some HOA president thought she could slap a tag on it and call it hers. So what's the plan? Pam asked, notepad ready, because that's who she is. I smiled, already feeling my confidence return. "Step 1, I said, looking out at the car, is to document everything." We had the video. Now I'd add photos, VIN plate, title, insurance, everything. Pam nodded. "Paper trail." "Exactly," I said, my grin widening. "Step 2, cut that ugly piece of plastic off my car." Pam looked up from the laptop, her brow furrowed. "And when she sees that, she'll escalate." "I'm counting on it," I said. "People like Karen don't think, they react. And when they react, they make mistakes. Big, loud, beautiful mistakes." Pam smiled, matching mine. She knew the plan. I walked to my toolbox, my grandfather's old metal one, and pulled out a pair of precision wire snips. As I stepped outside, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about principle. It was about standing your ground. You don't get to take things from people just because you shout the loudest. You don't get to win by being the most obnoxious person in the room. I crouched beside the rolls, steady and deliberate, and snipped the zip tie. It fell away, silent and harmless. The spirit of ecstasy stood free again, gleaming in the morning light. I picked up the yellow tag and turned it over in my hand. Cheap plastic. A false claim, I smiled. Evidence, I muttered, and walked back inside. The first shots had been fired. Now we waited for the inevitable and probably ridiculous counterattack. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I could feel Karen stewing across the street. Her curtains twitched every time I went to the mailbox. I'd give her a cheerful little wave. Petty, maybe, satisfying? Absolutely. Pam and I spent that time preparing. We installed a small security camera in the porch planter, angled perfectly at the driveway. The doorbell cam covered the street. Between the two, the rolls was fully protected, end to end. Our home was turning into a digital fortress, one video file at a time. A week later, the first official move came. A letter on HOA letterhead slipped into our mailbox. It was a bill. A $1,000 fine, $500 for our unauthorized removal of HOA property signage, and another $500 for failure to comply with a directive from the board president. All that for cutting a zip. Pam read over my shoulder and laughed. She's really going for it. She even cited a bylaw, 12C, tampering with official community notices. That's for tearing down pool cleaning signs, I said. shaking my head. Not for taking back your own car from a control freak. Attached to the fine was another notice. If payment wasn't made and the vehicle surrendered within 48 hours, it would be considered abandoned and towed at the owner's expense. Abandoned? I said, laughing. It's sitting in my driveway. I drove it to the grocery store last week. The only thing abandoned here is her grip on reality. But her threat was real enough. She couldn't legally tow a registered, insured vehicle from private property, but legality wasn't her playing field. Karen operated on pure arrogance. She believed authority and volume could replace logic. She's going to hire a tow truck, Pam said quietly. I nodded. Yeah, and she won't wait. She wants a spectacle, something to make her feel powerful in front of the neighbors. I looked out the window at the rolls, polished and proud in the driveway. The thought of a tow hook scraping that paint made my stomach twist. Not on my watch, so we prepared for a siege. The deadline was 6 a.m. Monday morning. Sunday night, I barely slept. I sat in the living room, eyes on the tablet showing our security feed. At 4 a.m., light rain began to fall, coating everything in a slick, glassy shine. By 5:45, the sky turned a bruised purple, and headlights appeared at the end of our street. A tow truck, if you could call it that. It was old, dented and rusted, something you'd call when your beater finally gave up and you were ready to sell it for scrap. Karen, in all her wisdom, had clearly gone with the cheapest option possible. This wasn't a professional outfit. This was a guy named Kevin with a hook and a chain. I nudged Pam. Showtime. She was already up, coffee in hand, phone ready to record. You ready? She asked. Born ready, I said, though exhaustion sat heavy in my chest. By the time I got outside, the tow truck was backing toward my driveway. The driver looked barely 20, with a cigarette hanging from his lip and uncertainty in his eyes. He looked at the rolls, then at his truck, then back again, already realizing this was a bad idea. And there she was. Karen standing on the sidewalk under a giant umbrella, smug as ever. Right on time, she said sharply. Hook it up and get it out of here. I walked down the driveway and stood between the truck and my car. Rain plastered my hair to my forehead. Morning, I said calmly. Can I help you? The driver hesitated. This lady said the car needs to be towed. He pointed to Karen. Right, I said. Thing is, this car belongs to me. It's on my private property and it's not abandoned. So no, it's not going anywhere. Karen stormed forward, her umbrella bobbing like a weapon. He has a work order from the homeowners association, she barked. This is official business. Move or I'll report you for non-compliance. I ignored her and turned to the driver. Look, man, I'm not trying to make your day harder. But she doesn't have the legal right to do this. If you hook up to my car and damage it, I'm not going after her. I'm coming after you and your company. And this car? It's worth a lot more than your truck. The driver froze, eyes darting between us. Karen's face flushed red. Don't listen to him. Just do your job. I'll sign whatever you need. The HOA will cover it. That's when I decided to make sure no one moved that car. I walked back into the garage and fired up my old Ford F-250, a beast of a truck. I backed it out and parked it nose to nose with the rolls, leaving just a few feet between them. Then I popped the hood and unspooled the heavy-duty winch cable mounted to the bumper. I ran the thick steel line under the rolls and hooked it to the rear axle, solid and unbreakable. I didn't tighten it yet. Just clicked the brake lock in place. 2.5 tons of steel now anchored that car to the driveway. The tow driver's eyes widened. Whoa, man, what are you doing? Just making sure my car doesn't roll away in the rain, I said with a straight face. Steep driveway. Karen was shaking with fury now. This is ridiculous. I'm calling the police. I smiled and gestured toward my door. Please do. I'd love to explain the situation to them, I said. So would my wife. She's filming all of this in glorious 4K. I pointed to Pam, standing on the porch with her phone held high, wearing a calm, polite smile. The tow truck driver looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was stuck between a furious HOA lady and a guy with a big truck and a winch who clearly wasn't backing down. The rain beat steadily against the pavement. The tow truck coughed and rattled. Karen was fuming. I stood there quietly, waiting. It was a perfect standoff. A small, rusty tow truck versus my heavy-duty Ford, with a priceless classic car caught in the middle. Something was about to snap, and I was pretty sure it wouldn't be my winch cable. The tow driver, his name was Kevin, I'd later learn, looked between me and Karen, then down at his flimsy metal hook. He was sweating despite the cool morning air. A young guy trapped in a fight way above his pay grade. Just hook it up, Karen barked, her voice rising. Are you really going to let him intimidate you? I'm your client. Kevin looked my way. I met his gaze calmly. I wasn't trying to scare him, just stating facts. Your choice, man, I said evenly. But think real hard about it. That woman promises a lot. I'm promising you a lawsuit if you scratch my car. He hesitated, biting his lip. After a long pause, he sighed and turned to Karen. Ma'am, I can't do this. This is private property. The car's not in a fire lane. If I pull it, I could lose my license. Karen's face went from smug to furious in an instant. It was like watching a thunderstorm form out of thin air. You'll do as you're told, she shouted. I have a signed work order. The HOA is a legal entity. The HOA isn't a court of law, I added calmly. Kevin looked ready to back down, but Karen wasn't done. She yanked a wad of cash from her coat pocket. Here, $200 in cash right now. Just get it to the street. Kevin's eyes flicked to the money. $200 is tempting when you're standing in the rain at 6 a.m. Whatever professionalism he had left vanished. Greed won. He grabbed the cash and stuffed it into his jeans. Fine, he muttered. But if anything happens, it's on you. Just get it done. Karen hissed. Kevin unspooled his chain and crouched beside the rolls. I knew what he was about to do. Hook onto the front suspension. The easiest grab point and the fastest way to destroy the alignment and scratch the chrome. Don't you dare, I warned, my voice low and steady. He ignored me, laying down in the wet grass to attach his greasy J-hook. While he fumbled under the car, I walked back to my truck, climbed in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. Then I hit the winch switch, the motor whirred. The steel cable I'd run under the rolls to its rear axle tightened, the slack disappearing until it was stretched like a guitar string. The car lowered slightly, now anchored to 2.5 tons of solid American steel. Kevin finally secured his strap around the front end, soaked through and shaking. All right, stand back, he shouted, trying to sound confident. He jumped into his truck, revved the engine, and threw it into gear. The chain went taut. The little tow truck's tires spun helplessly on the slick asphalt. The rolls didn't budge, not an inch. More gas. Karen screamed over the roar. Kevin stomped harder. The truck groaned, shuddered, and screamed. The chain strained to the breaking point while my winch held firm. The rolls was caught in a tug-of-war between physics and foolishness, then crack. The nylon strap snapped like a gunshot. The chain whipped backward, slamming into the side of Kevin's truck with a metallic clang. The sudden release jolted the rolls forward just enough for one chrome hubcap to pop loose, spinning across the street before coming to rest in a puddle. Kevin stared at his clipboard, realizing his mistake. No winch rating for this weight, he muttered. If I pull, I lose my license. The rain filled the silence that followed. Kevin shut off his engine, stepped out slowly, and walked toward Karen. His face was pale. He tossed the soggy cash onto the ground at her feet. Forget it, he said, voice trembling. This job's not worth it. You're crazy. He's crazy. I'm done. He left his broken strap and chain where they lay, climbed into his truck and drove off, leaving behind a trail of smoke. Karen stood motionless, staring at the cash and the lonely hubcap. Her big plan had literally snapped in half. I picked up the hubcap, wiped it clean, no damage. Then I looked at her. Her face was pure fury. She'd been humiliated. Her enforcer quit. Her scheme failed spectacularly. Looks like you'll need a new plan, I said, unable to hide my satisfaction. She glared at me with a hatred so intense it was almost impressive. Then she turned and stormed off toward her house, leaving her $200 soaking in the rain. I stood there in the drizzle, holding the hubcap, watching her go. I'd won the battle, but I knew this wasn't over. The war had just turned personal. By mid-morning, the story spread through the neighborhood text chain. Did you see what happened at Ron's place? Pam showed me the messages. Most of the neighbors were on our side. They saw Karen for what she was, a bully, but humiliation wouldn't stop her. It would only make her more dangerous. The rest of the day was eerily quiet. No letters. No threats, nothing. That silence was worse than anger. It meant she was planning something. She's going to try something at night, I told Pam as we got ready for bed. She's done playing fair. Our cameras are still running, Pam reminded me. They've got night vision. Good, I said. Let's hope we don't need them. But of course we did. Around 1 a.m. I woke up. The house was too quiet. Then everything went dark. The hum of the fridge stopped. The blue standby light on the TV blinked out. The digital clock died. Power outage. At first I thought it was the storm. The rain had picked up, but there was no thunder or lightning. Just silence. Ron? Pam whispered beside me. I'm here, I said. Power's out. Think it's the storm? I don't know, I murmured. But my gut told me something was wrong. I got up and looked out the window. Every other house on the street still had lights. The street lamps were on. It was only us. My heart started pounding. Pam, I said quietly. It's just our house. She was at my side in seconds. She wouldn't, she whispered. She would, I replied. Our main breaker box was outside near the back fence, easy to reach if someone wanted to cut power. Then we heard it. A faint scrape. The sound of shoes on wood. I didn't hesitate. I threw on jeans and grabbed my heavy mag light. Pam followed, phone in hand, already filming. We moved carefully through the dark house to the back door. The moonlight spilled across the yard, and there, two shadows landed softly on the wet grass. Big guys in dark hoodies moving fast and quiet toward the side gate. They're going for the car, I whispered. Pam kept filming. I've got them, she whispered back. My mind was racing. Call the cops? Yes, but if they heard us, they'd vanish before help arrived. I needed to keep them there long enough to catch them in the act. The question I'd always wrestled with, when to stand your ground versus when to call the cops, suddenly had a new answer. Why not both? A risky but simple plan formed in my head. Keep filming, I whispered to Pam. I'm going out the front. She grabbed my arm. Ron, be careful. They're idiots, not assassins, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. They're here to move a car, not start a fight. I slipped quietly out the front door, staying in the shadows. The side gate they were heading for had a simple latch on the inside, but a heavy-duty bolt with a padlock on the outside. I always kept that padlock hanging open, ready to use. I crept along the wall and reached the corner just as the two figures approached the gate from inside the yard. I could hear their whispers through the rain. It's just a latch, one of them said. Karen said this would be easy. That was all the confirmation I needed. The latch clicked. The gate started to swing open, and that was my cue. I stepped out from behind the corner, raised my heavy mag light, and flicked it on. The beam hit them square in the face. They froze like deer in headlights, hands up to block the glare. Looking for something? I asked, voice steady. One of them panicked and shoved me. It wasn't a real hit, just a desperate push to get past. I stumbled back exactly as I'd planned. As he bolted through the opening, I slammed the gate shut behind him with one hand and dropped the bolt into place with the other. Clank. Then, before the second guy could react, I gave him a firm shove back into the yard. He tripped over his own feet and fell onto the wet grass. It was over in seconds, one outside, one trapped inside. I snapped the padlock shut with a satisfying click. From the porch, Pam called out, "Congratulations, you're in timeout." The guy outside started to panic. "Hey, let him out." The one inside got to his feet, angry and confused. "What the heck, man?" "Sorry, fellas," I said, shining the flashlight on the lock. "Gates closed for the night. You should have called ahead." I turned to the man still inside the fence. "You look thirsty. Stay put." I walked back to the porch. Pam was still filming, her face a mix of fear and disbelief. I gave her a wink, went inside, and came back with 2 juice boxes from the fridge. Apple grape. I handed one through the fence. "Here you go, big guy. Looks like you'll be here a while." He just stared at it, dumbfounded. I kept my light on them and dialed 911. "Yes, hello," I said calmly. "I'd like to report a trespassing. I have 2 men here who seem to be lost. One's locked in my backyard and the other, well, he's right here. My address is 121 Willow Lane, no rush. They're not going anywhere." The guy outside the fence heard that, eyes wide. He bolted down the street, sprinting into the darkness. I didn't chase him. His friend and the evidence were enough. While we waited for the police, Pam came over with her phone flashlight. "Ron, look at this." She led me to the breaker box. The main switch had been flipped, just as I suspected. But worse, the metal latch on the box had been cut clean through with bolt cutters. Below it, in the wet mud, were 2 perfect boot prints. Pam crouched low, filming everything in detail. I pressed a plastic cup into the mud to make a quick mold and scraped a few metal flakes from the latch into a sandwich bag. "Perfect," she whispered, snapping high-resolution photos of the prints and the damage. This was no longer a petty neighborhood spat. This was breaking and entering. Property damage. And Karen had crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. We had it all. Footage of them hopping the fence, audio of them mentioning her name, and physical evidence tying it all together. The game had changed and the score was finally in our favor. Minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up, red and blue lights flashing across the wet street. 2 officers stepped out, a young rookie and an older. World-weary sergeant. I explained everything clearly. Showed them the man still locked in my backyard, now sitting on my patio furniture, soaked and defeated, and handed over Pam's photos and the footage. The younger officer went to deal with our uninvited guest, while the older one, Sergeant Miller, listened quietly, nodding as I spoke. He had the look of a man who'd seen every kind of nonsense imaginable. "So this all started over a car?" he asked, shaking his head. "It started over an HOA president who thinks the rules don't apply to her," I said. "The car's just her trophy." Pam showed him the video of the men jumping the fence. "And you said one of them mentioned a Karen?" "Clear as a bell," Pam said. "Got the audio. The man in my yard, whose name turned out to be Dale, wasn't exactly a master criminal. He cracked within 30 seconds. He admitted everything. Karen had paid him and his buddy $100 each to move the car. Their plan? Cut the power, roll the 2-ton vehicle down the driveway and push it to the corner where Karen was waiting in her minivan. Dale was arrested for trespassing and property damage. Sergeant Miller took our flash drive and evidence bags, handing me a case number. "We'll pay Miss Goodson a visit in the morning," he said, shaking his head. "This is something else." The next day, Karen's house was silent. No peeking through blinds, no smug stares. A patrol car sat outside for an hour, then left. She was laying low now. She knew she was in trouble. The legal gears were turning, but a simple charge wouldn't be enough. A slap on the wrist wouldn't stop her. Not after everything she'd done. We needed to take away what she valued most, her control. That's when Pam said what we were both thinking. It was time to go on the offensive. Not with violence, but with pure, harmless pettiness. She tried to steal your car. She tried to fine us. She sent her cousins to break in, Pam said, ticking them off on her fingers. She's lost her right to be treated like a reasonable person. I agree, I said. So what's our first move? Pam's eyes lit up. This was her arena. She hates anything tacky or out of place, she grinned. And she hates being laughed at even more. At the next community bake sale, Pam placed 24 chocolate cupcakes on the table, each one frosted in bright red letters. Not yours, Hank. One of our neighbors bought one and took a big bite. Tastes like justice, he said. A few days later, Karen tried to host her usual sidewalk chat. Every time she spoke, my Rolls chirped its horn. Neighbors giggled until she finally gave up and stormed off. That night, Pam chalked the curb in front of our driveway. Private property. Please do not steal. Simple, petty, effective. Each small act of revenge was therapeutic, a way to take back control. For someone like Karen, being laughed at hurt more than any fine, but we knew this wasn't the end. The cupcakes and jokes were just warm-ups. The real victory would come at the upcoming HOA meeting, the one time all homeowners gathered. We had the evidence, the police report, and the truth. Now we needed to show everyone that Karen wasn't just a bully. She was unfit to lead. The bake sale was the appetizer. The HOA meeting would be the main course. Pam and I got to work. Our living room became a command center. Papers and laptops covering the table, evidence files open, and one clear goal in mind: make our case airtight. We've got the video of the tagging, Pam said, pulling up a file. Let's make sure no one can ignore this. We've got the video of the tow truck fiasco. And the footage of her cousins breaking in, Pam said. And the police report backs it all up, I added. But that's still just about me. It's her versus us. If we want the whole neighborhood on our side, we need to show how she's hurting everyone, not just me. Pam's eyes narrowed. The money. It's always about the money. That was it. Karen had been treating the HOA dues like her personal piggy bank for years. She approved expensive flower beds no one asked for, and hired consultants for projects that mysteriously never happened. Fees kept rising, but no one could ever prove where the money went. The HOA's finances were a locked vault, and only Karen and the treasurer, A timid man named Arthur Pinter held the keys. "We need Arthur," I said. "He's the gatekeeper of the books." "He's terrified of her," Pam replied. "He'll never talk." "Maybe not," I said. "But maybe he just needs to believe he won't be the only one speaking up." Still, I needed one more piece of hard evidence. One final nail in Karen's coffin. Then it hit me. I went back to the first video Pam had taken, the one where Karen tagged my car. I zoomed in on her face as she looked at the rolls. The greed was obvious, but there was something else, the way she said it. "It'll be the lead car in our Founders Day parade." The parade. That was her excuse for everything. Pam put the HOA insurer's tip line on. Speaker. "If an HOA borrows a private car for an event," she asked, "is that covered?" A pause, then the rep replied flatly, "Absolutely not." Pam grinned. "Let's get that in writing." I started wondering if Karen had used HOA funds to prep for that parade, one featuring a car she didn't even own. I searched online and found the HOA's insurance company. Then I drafted a polite but pointed email as a concerned homeowner. "Dear Sir or Madam, our HOA president, Ms. Karen Goodson, is planning a Founders Day parade. I've been told that a privately owned classic car is being used. Could you confirm whether our HOA's liability insurance covers the use, transport, or acquisition of privately owned vehicles for such events?" I didn't expect a quick reply, but less than 48 hours later a formal letter arrived from a senior claims adjuster. The language was cold, corporate, and devastating. It stated clearly, "Our policy provides coverage for incidents on HOA property or sanctioned community events. This does not extend to costs involving private property. Any claim involving a non-HOA-owned vehicle would be denied in full. The HOA would be solely liable for any damages. There is no coverage for the activities you have described." I printed the letter. It was perfect. The official, legal version of absolutely not. This was proof that Karen wasn't just unethical. She was reckless. She was putting the entire community at massive financial risk just to feed her ego. Now it was time to prepare our presentation. I laid everything out on the dining table like a courtroom exhibit. Exhibit A, the title to my car, undeniable proof of ownership. Exhibit B, photos of the VIN on the chassis matching the one on the title. Exhibit C, the video of Karen illegally tagging the car as community property. Exhibit D, the threatening letter and $1,000 fine she sent me. Exhibit E, the tow truck video showing her attempt to take the car by force. Exhibit F, the police report detailing the break-in by her cousins. Exhibit G, the insurance letter proving her parade plan was a huge, uninsured risk to everyone. But while I was building my case, Pam was digging deeper. She'd gone back to the security footage from the break-in night. Not the part where the men hopped the fence, but earlier. "Look at this," she said, pointing at the screen. The timestamp was about an hour before the power went out. The camera showed my driveway, and there she was. Karen, alone, creeping into the frame like a thief in the dark. She walked up to the Rolls Royce, glanced around, and started prying at the rear license plate with her bare hands. When that didn't work, she pulled a screwdriver from her pocket and tried to unscrew it. She was actually trying to remove the plates, probably to make the car harder to identify as mine. The night vision footage was grainy, but it was undeniably her. Her face, her movements, the screwdriver, all caught on camera. She gave up after a minute, frustrated, and scurried away into the dark. It was the smoking gun, attempted theft and vandalism, caught red-handed. This was the smoking gun, proof of everything. Attempted theft, vandalism, the works. It was all there, captured in grainy green and black. We now had 4K color footage of Karen claiming my car as hers, and night vision video of her trying to tamper with it. Together, they told the full story. We edited everything into a short 5-minute presentation, a greatest hits of Karen's reign of chaos. It was devastating. The night before the HOA meeting, I walked over to Arthur Pinter's house. He was watering his roses, looking jumpy as ever. "Arthur," I said gently, "I need to talk to you." He glanced around nervously as if Karen might leap out from behind a bush. "I can't, Ron," he whispered. "I don't want any trouble. The trouble's already here," I told him. "And it's about to get a lot worse for her." "I have evidence, Arthur. Real evidence. Police reports, videos. Tomorrow at the meeting, it's all coming out. You have a choice. Go down with her or help save this community from her. Check the books. Anything tied to a parade consultant or event planning. I think you'll find something interesting." I didn't wait for an answer. I just met his eyes, nodded, and walked away. The seed was planted. Now I had to hope it would grow. By that night, everything was ready. I called Sergeant Miller. "The DA saw your videos," he said. "Fraud's in play. If the treasurer confirms payments, we'll have a warrant ready." The evidence was solid. The videos were edited. The stage was set for the showdown. The night of the annual HOA meeting, the community center was packed. People lined the walls, buzzing with tension. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. My feud with Karen had become the talk of the neighborhood. She still had her loyalists, mostly the older residents, who loved her strict lawn rules, but they were outnumbered by neighbors tired of her power trips. Karen sat at the front table with the board, trying to look in control. She wore a power suit, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, but I could see the panic flickering in her eyes. Arthur Pinter, the treasurer, sat at the far end, staring at a stack of papers, refusing to look up. Pam and I found seats near the back. I had a laptop and projector at my feet. She had her phone ready to record everything. We were set. The meeting started with the usual boring reports, landscaping updates, minutes from the last session. Karen rushed through it all, desperate to end early. When she reached the new business section, she said quickly, "Seeing no new business." I moved to adjourn, that was my cue. "Actually, Madam President," I said, my voice cutting through the silence, "I have some new business to discuss." Every head turned. Karen's glare could have cut glass. "You're out of order, Mr. Freeman," she snapped. "Am I?" I asked calmly. "I believe any homeowner can bring a matter of community importance before the board, and this one's important." Before she could shut me down, our neighbor Hank stood up. "I think we should hear him out." He boomed a chorus of, "Yeah," and "Let him speak," filled the room. Karen was cornered. She couldn't silence a room full of angry homeowners. "Fine," she hissed. "You have 5 minutes." "I'll only need 5, I replied. I walked to the front, set up the projector, and faced the crowd. "A few weeks ago," I began, "our HOA president decided that my privately owned, fully restored 1962 Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud was, in her words, community property." Gasps rippled through the room. I looked at Karen. Her face was stone. "She even tagged it," I said. Clicking the first slide, the projector flickered on, revealing a crystal-clear image of the yellow tag zip-tied to the spirit of ecstasy. The crowd gasped again. "I thought it was a joke at first," I continued, "but it wasn't." The next video played, Pam's recording from that first morning. The room listened as Karen's smug voice filled the speakers, declaring my car hers and tagging it like a trophy. "Then she tried to have it illegally towed," I said, playing the next clip. The tow truck, the screaming strap, the hubcap rolling away. The room erupted with laughter and disbelief. "When that failed, she escalated," I said, my tone hardening. "She sent her cousins to my home in the middle of the night." The night vision video rolled. 2 figures climbed my fence. "Karen said this would be easy," one of them muttered on the audio. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. "This wasn't a petty dispute anymore," I said firmly. "This was criminal. And just in case anyone still believes she's innocent." I paused, locking eyes with Karen. "Here's your HOA president. Caught an hour before the break-in, trying to pry the license plate off my car with a screwdriver." The final clip played, the grainy footage of Karen herself, unmistakably tampering with my car. The room exploded. People were shouting, "Shame! Resign!" Karen sat frozen, white as a sheet. This is an invasion of my privacy," she stammered. "That footage is illegal." "Illegal?" I shot back. "Is it as illegal as breaking and entering? Or trying to steal a car? Because the police didn't think so when they arrested your cousin." The chaos reached a fever pitch, and that's when Arthur Pinter, the quiet, nervous treasurer, slowly stood up. Arthur's hand trembled as he stood holding a sheet of paper, but his voice came out steady. "There's more," he said, and the room fell silent. Every head turned toward him. "Karen's been telling the board that the rising HOA dues were for community beautification projects," Arthur began, his confidence growing with each word. "But I did some digging, just like Mr. Freeman suggested. I found an invoice, a $10,000 payment made last month to a so-called parade consultant. He lifted the paper higher. I looked up the company. It's a shell business. 1 employee, no office, and the address matches the man who was arrested in Mr. Freeman's yard. The crowd erupted. The truth hit everyone like a wave. Karen hadn't just tried to steal my car for her parade. She'd stolen $10,000 of the community's money to pay her own cousin through a fake company. She wasn't just petty, she was corrupt. That was the breaking point. The room exploded in shouts of anger. People were on their feet yelling at the board. Karen sat frozen, her face collapsing under the weight of it all. Sharon, one of the other board members, stood up and snatched the gavel from in front of Karen. "I think we need a vote," she said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "A vote of no confidence. All in favor of removing Karen Goodson as HOA president, say aye." The response was deafening. A chorus of voices shouted, "Aye!" "And opposed?" Sharon asked formally. Silence. Not even Karen spoke. "The motion carries," Sharon declared. "Karen, you are removed from the board, effective immediately." Right then, the double doors opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the room, followed by Sergeant Miller. They had been waiting outside. "Ma'am," Miller said evenly, "we have a warrant for your arrest. Charges include attempted theft and fraud. Financial charges are pending." Karen's eyes darted around wildly as the officers cuffed her right there in front of everyone. The same neighbors she had bullied for years watched in stunned silence as her empire crumbled. Her reign was over, and we had won. Watching her being led out of the community center was a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt that sharp rush of victory, the bully finally beaten. But another part just felt exhausted. The whole thing had been ridiculous. All that anger, all that wasted energy. Because one person's ego couldn't handle being told no. The board appointed Sharon as interim president that same night. She promised a full, transparent audit of the HOA's finances, with Arthur Pinter, now visibly relieved, leading the review. The tension in the room slowly faded into relief. Neighbors came up to Pam and me, shaking our hands and thanking us for standing up. Hank clapped me on the back so hard I nearly fell over. "Knew you had it in you, Ron." He laughed. "That was better than television." Pam and I just smiled. We didn't feel like heroes, we just wanted peace. We'd fought back the only way we knew how, with a camera, a laptop, a winch, and a little stubbornness. The next morning, everything felt different. The neighborhood was quieter, lighter. By the afternoon, a for sale sign was planted in Karen's perfect lawn. Word was she'd made bail and was leaving town fast. The charges were serious and the evidence was ironclad. Her little empire in Willowcrest was done for good. A few days later, I finally got to do what I'd wanted all along. It was a bright Saturday morning. I went into the garage, uncovered the Rolls Royce, and gave her a quick check. Then I popped the shiny hubcap back into place. It clicked with a satisfying thud. The car was whole again. Pam squeezed my hand. "We keep what we build," she said softly. "And we film what they break," I added with a grin. This time she came out not with coffee, but a picnic basket. "Ready to go, driver?" she asked, smiling. "Ready as I'll ever be." I opened the door for her, then climbed into the driver's seat. The big V8 purred to life, a deep, contented rumble that felt like peace itself. I backed out of the driveway slowly. The pearl gray paint gleamed in the sun. The spirit of ecstasy caught the light like it was smiling. Instead of heading straight to the highway, I took a slow lap around the block. It wasn't a victory lap, it was a reclaiming. This was my neighborhood, my car, my peace, and I had taken it back. As we passed Karen's house, the for sale sign standing like a gravestone on her once perfect lawn, I gave the horn a quick toot-toot. Not loud, not mocking, just a polite, ironic goodbye. Pam laughed. "You're terrible," she said. "I know," I grinned. "But I'm your terrible." We drove out of Willowcrest and onto the open road. The sun was warm, the car was smooth, and my best friend was beside me. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. We didn't need lawyers or drama, just truth, persistence, and the courage to stand our ground. The whole thing taught me something. Most bullies, whether on the playground or running an HOA, count on you being too tired or too scared to push back. They rely on silence. Sometimes all it takes to win is to stop playing their game. To stand your ground, look them in the eye and say, "No, this is mine." And maybe, just maybe, Have a wife who knows how to use a camera and a truck with a really good winch.